I had always had an interest in real estate, specifically in the investment side. 2017 bought my first house and it was an absolute disaster. And I think everyone in my family was like, "What are you doing?" My mom tried to talk me out of it. And then when my now wife, then girlfriend, saw it for the first time, she was like, "Why did you do this?" But that was the first step into the real estate journey. But I was so motivated to get out of that job that I just
Yeah.
plowed through it really quickly. It's a small team, but it's just two of us selling with an admin, and we're top 5% realtors in our market.
All right, guys. Today on the show, we have Mitchell Berry. Mitchell is a local realtor, and we actually just wanted to talk to him because there's all kinds of questions people have right now, especially in the home buying or selling market. And Mitchell, if you can just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of like what brought you into real estate, and maybe we can help people understand, kind of how to, buy and sell and not lose in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me on. It's exciting.
Absolutely.
It's always fun talking about this, and we get questions about the market every single day, and so it's nice to be able to throw it out there to everyone. So me personally, still pretty young. I'm a young guy, right? Which is great for me. But I graduated college in 2017. My degrees in finance and financial planning. And so that's kind of what I thought I was going to do. Realized I hated financial planning, did one of the internships with that, and it was not for me. Still liked finance, so I jumped into hedge fund administration fresh out of college it was the leading hedge fund administration company in the world. Still is, I believe. And was a good job, but also incredibly boring, and the pay sucked, and it was not enjoyable, not worthwhile. Like, it didn't give you much reward or anything. And so I had always had an interest in real estate, specifically in the investment side. So when I was fresh out of college, 2017 bought my first house, and it was an absolute disaster. $45,000 fixer upper. And I think everyone in my family was like, "What are you doing?" My mom tried to talk me out of it. And then when my now wife, then girlfriend, saw it for the first time, she was like, "Why did you do this?" But that was the first step into the real estate journey. And then fast forward about a year, I was trying to get a raise at my job. And so I was like, I'll just go get an offer from someone, put it on my boss's desk, say, "Hey, pay me more money." Applied to one of the largest teams, real estate teams here in town, got an offer. And then when I got that offer, I was like, "I'm not going to pass this up." So got licensed in, I believe it was like 10 days, which normally people around here, I mean, I say license, I did the class and the test and then had to wait on the paperwork, but typically takes about half a year, give or take. But I was so motivated to get out of that job that I just
Yeah.
plowed through it really quickly. So jumped onto that team, and then from there, I mean, the rest is history. Was with that team for about a year, learning the ropes, just doing a ton of business that first year. Jumped out on my own, did the whole single agent thing for a while, and then now we have it's a small team, but it's just two of us selling, with an admin, and we're top 5% realtors in our market.
Wow. Dude,
Yep.
that's a lot right there.
Yeah, especially 5 years in. I mean, most of those realtors in that top 52 are not all of them. There's some other absolute studs out there just killing it, and they're pretty new to the business. But a lot of those are the people who have been in it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But you see a growing kind of body of these younger people jumping into real estate because it does provide you with a lot of benefits. So it's cool. It's cool to see, but it's a grind.
Sure, sure. Well, let me ask you, you touched on a few topics, and of course I've bought,
Yep.
and I think this is our third house, but it's always interesting because like a first time home buyer, like what would, if you were to give advice to like a first time home buyer, like I know there's like, it's been a while since that's happened for us, but there's like a special incentives, right? For like if it's your first house. It's too bad that can't be the house that you're like in now or like you're gonna buy soon or something like
Yep.
that. But like, because everybody's first house is the one you're like, oh my gosh, why did I buy a 2 bedroom, 1 bath house? Like, this is never gonna sell. Like, it's never gonna gain any value, really. Like,
Right.
that was my opinion anyway. I don't know if it's still like that, but
Mhm.
maybe not over the last couple of years because of the COVID craziness and all that. But like, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's buying their first house today?
Yeah, so we love first time home buyers. I think I need to run the numbers. I want to say it's probably 70 to 80% of our business are first time home buyers.
Wow.
And now that's those people are starting to buy their second home and third home and whatnot. But we love doing that because we try and educate a ton on the front end. And so that my first piece of advice is find a good realtor who's going to educate. So many realtors either don't know how to do that or they're too scared to ask if a buyer would find value in that. But every time we sit down with a brand new home buyer, we sit down, we call it a buyer's consultation. Before we go look at homes, we sit down and go from step one all the way to the very end and say, this is what the process looks like. This is what you can expect to pay for your inspection, for your appraisal, for your closing costs. Like, what does that maintenance look like? What type of home do you want? Like all those things, so we can understand what they're needing. So my first piece of advice is find a good realtor who's going to educate you. And there's a lot of them out there, but there's a lot of bad ones too. So if you can find one of those great realtors that's going to educate you, that's fantastic. Go ahead and get pre-approved. Do not wait for that. There's a ton of myths around there of, I don't want to get my credit pulled or this or that. I think on average, when you get your credit pulled from a lender, it's going to affect your score maybe 3 points. It's like less than five usually. And then once you get that credit pulled, and this is more of a loan officer kind of realm thing, but I believe you can get it pulled from as many lenders as you want in 30 days without it being another hard pull. So they came out with that law a long time ago to protect from predatory
Yeah.
lenders. You get your credit pulled from one person, you're scared to do it again. So go ahead and get that done. It gives you an idea of how much you can spend on on a house, how much that payment's going to be. Because if you can afford a $400,000 house, and then you see the payment, not everyone wants to, or it's not wise too, always to have that payment. And they can answer all those questions for you. How much is your down payment? How much are the closing costs? Things like that. Plus, I just posted today about a lender. Some of them are running great incentives. And so shopping around and getting those recommendations are great where they can lower your rate or pay for your appraisal. So basically, the biggest piece of advice on the front end, get educated, get all your ducks in a row, because the last thing you want is to find that house and then be like, A, I don't know what's going on, or B, what do we do? Or do we need to get pre-approved? Can I get pre-approved? Another offer comes in, you lose out on the house from there.
What's that look like getting pre-approved? Like if I'm a new home buyer, like to be quite honest, like I'll just give you a quick story here. When we came to town, like I had no idea, like like we got a realtor because we want to live somewhere. We don't want to live in an
Right.
apartment forever. And I was like, they said, well, how much do how much can we spend on this? I don't know. I had no idea. Like, is there like kind of like a ballpark if you said, it's three times your income, or is there some sort of like, I don't know, like number that you kind of go, this is kind of maybe where I think it should be, like, or could afford, or just to get an idea?
Yeah, so I think, and again, more of a loan officer type question to get into the specifics, but if you don't have any other debt, right, and you've got good credit, those are two big qualifying factors that I want to say up front. Um, I think they'll go up to, and it depends on your loan type. Some are more lenient than others, but I'd say, 50% is going to be kind of on your in debt to income with your mortgage, but that's usually not recommended. I'd say most people, I think most financial professionals recommend around 30% for your housing costs, because you've also got to think you've got your mortgage, insurance, taxes, and your principal and interest is built into that. And so I think they'll run it up to 50, but that's usually not a very smart decision to do.
Okay. So
And then
somebody hearing this
especially
the first time, if they're making, let's just say $6,000 a month, you're going to say 3,000, they will lend up to that point if in some
probably.
certain circumstances, right? Obviously
Yep.
dependent, but okay. Just to be clear here. So
Yeah, but it's gonna be wiser if you can stay more towards that $2,000 mark, and I would try and
I see.
include in even utilities, like any housing expenses and homeownership, things break. So,
Right.
make sure you're setting aside money for that. I would try and lump that all into that amount, not just your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Right. There surprises that come along with some of that stuff later, and you go, my
Oh, yeah.
goodness, that was another 400 or 500 bucks you weren't expecting, right? So like that's sometimes these things happen.
Right, right. And
Okay.
usually those are escrowed in. Your insurance and taxes are, which helps save for them. But then, as well as I do, your taxes go up every year, and your insurance goes up quite a bit too. So that
Always.
number continues to go up. So if you're already uncomfortable with it, you might want to think twice, because next year that could go up a little bit.
Right. Okay. And when you just for home first time home buyers, I'm kind of playing a little stupid here, but that just means basically that they're throwing all that together for you and that is your payment, but it's paying all of that.
Correct. You'll get your
Okay.
bill for your insurance and taxes, but it also goes to whoever holds your mortgage, and they pay it for you 9
Right.
times out of 10. Again, if you're putting 50% down with a conventional loan, sometimes you get the choice to pay those yourself, but usually it's way easier to have them escrow. And then if those numbers go up, and the escrow had $2,000 in it, and then your taxes are now higher than that, then your whole payment's going to go up that next year.
Gotcha. It kind of helps offset that then. Fair enough. And
Correct.
what
Yep.
like if for like a special incentives, what have you seen or what should new home buyers be looking for something like that?
Yeah, so, like, we have a lender right now that's doing, basically, they'll buy your rate down. So you can get a rate in the 6s. Right now, you're sitting low to mid 7s, and then they're even paying for your appraisal up to $600, and then if you refinance with them in the next 3 years, they do it for free.
Oh wow.
So when rates actually come down. Yeah, so not many lenders will do that. That's one thing, but there are a bunch of other programs, and not all of them are specific to the actual lender. So say you go with a specific bank, some of them, there are programs like Indiana Housing that's all over the state, as long as the lender is willing to do it and qualified to do it, where they'll even give you grants for your down payment. Now, there are caveats with it. Say they give you a 3% for your down payment. Well, you might have to stay in the home 3 or 5 years, or you have to pay all or some of that back. So, you wanna be educated on those things. Find a loan officer and an agent who are gonna be honest with you on it. So those are great incentives. And then also, not as much of an incentive as something to think about, they're doing 2-1 or 3-2-1 buy downs. So basically, and you can get this now that the market's finally cooling off. You can sometimes ask for this as a concession from the seller, but for simplicity's sake, take the 2-1 buy down. The seller pays money up front, and they're basically paying your interest for 2 years. It's
Mhm.
set aside in an account. So say you have a 7% interest rate. That first year, you're going to have a 5. Then the second year, you're going to have a 6, i.e., the 2 and then the 1.
Mhm.
And then that third year, you go back to your normal interest rate of the 7. But ideally, the goal is then to have interest rates come down by that time, to where then you can refinance down into the lower rate. So hopefully, we're back in the 5s at that point, and
Hmm.
then you never actually hit that 7%, and the seller paid that interest for you.
It's kind of some unique financing to make that helpful on the buyer, huh?
Yes, and they talked about it a ton when rates started to go up, but no one could actually use it because you would be paying it yourself. So unless you just had a lot of cash and you didn't want to have a higher monthly payment, but I mean, it's still the same numbers. But now houses are sitting, so if the seller pays it for you,
Yeah.
it's way nicer, to have
Oh
that
my
lower
gosh,
payment.
yes. I could see
Yeah.
that. I mean, especially since we've seen rates, at a lower, two and a half and three, and now seeing them higher is he's kind of angry. That does that have you found that that's been a problem for not only you as trying to sell houses, but like people wanting to buy them because the obviously the payment's gone up.
Yeah, so I think the market has dramatically shifted. Now here in the Midwest kind of area, not so much. We've got friends out in like Phoenix, Arizona, and like all these bigger cities that feel these high highs and these low lows, and we're more insulated from that. But those places have seen, I mean, 6 months ago, they started seeing this big impact from interest rates. Personally, I think for us, we didn't start feeling it more intensely until the last month or two. And I think it's a combination of high interest rates, high inflation. We're seeing like massive credit card debt. So we're starting to see foreclosures tick up. Like, people have less money. I mean, it's tough to live right now. So sales this year, if you look in our market specifically, across the board are down about 15%, specifically in Vanderburgh County. And homes are sitting longer. And I think a lot of it goes back to this interest rates, which can also be traced back to then inflation. So yeah, we've had a lot of buyers say, I'm going to sit out and wait. Maybe smart, maybe not, because once rates hit 5%, I think the competition and the prices just go back up.
Mhm.
But if you don't like the payment at 7%, then sure, that's something you have to take into consideration. Plus, we haven't really seen prices from a statistical. We feel them coming down, but if you look at the pure numbers in our market, prices have not actually dropped yet. But I think you'll see that. My guess is kind of first quarter into first quarter next year, we'll actually see the discrepancy in prices where they've actually come down some. But I don't. If I had to guess, if I had a crystal ball, they're not going to come down like a 2008 or like a California price would or anything like that.
Right. I gotcha. Okay. Um, that's very interesting. Like, as far as if somebody wanted to like refinance, let's say interest rates do go down, in the next 2 years, something like that. Like I mentioned to you, and it's probably a famous saying in the realtor world, like, date the rate, love the house, right? So like
Yep.
it's kind of one of those things that we expect the rates to go down, but like, what would happen, like, as far as if somebody wanted to like take that high rate and they're
Mhm.
at their home, they're in their home now, they bought the house, but they decided, hey, I don't want to do this high rate anymore. I want to refinance this. Like, is the process almost like buying a house? Like, because we never actually did that, but it sounded like it could be quite a, like buying a house is like a challenge. Oh, well, I mean, a little bit of a challenge, right? Like, it's
Right.
all these, especially like for myself and maybe for you, like being kind of self-employed,
It's a
it's
nightmare.
damn near a big toe to get a home loan, right? So it's kind of funny, but at the same time, like, is that a fairly easy process to like take that rate and get it lowered?
Yes, it is very similar to buying the house. The only difference is usually it's a little less quick, right? So when you're buying a house, you've got a purchase agreement, you have timelines you have to meet, you've got inspections, you've got a closing date. If you miss that closing date, the seller might be really, really pissed at you for it. Where refinancing, right? Who are we trying to make happy, right? There's no seller; it's just you and the bank.
Right.
But they do want every piece of paper you've ever signed and all your tax documents and your firstborn child all over again. So that is, I mean, it is tough, and especially if you are self-employed, I mean, they want all of it. So it can be frustrating for sure, but it's definitely worth it if you can drop your rate by 1%, 2% or more.
Oh yeah, it could save you
Um,
hundreds of dollars you could put somewhere else, right? I mean, it makes sense to
right,
do it. All
right,
right, so I'm
yeah,
going to say kind of a dirty word, and hopefully it'll be okay to put this out on the podcast. But if we say the word Zillow, it
ooh,
yeah, right. No realtor likes this word, right? It's a
no,
very very dirty word. But tell me about it. Like tell me the good and the bad. Like, what do you see? I
yeah.
mean, there's got to be some positives.
Sure, sure.
Let's
Yeah, so
start
we can
there.
I mean, you can dig into a ton of stuff there. So Zillow, I wanna say that their market share in that space is about 30%, and any business who has 30% of any market share, I mean, it's huge.
Heck
And so
yeah.
they've done a great job of syndicating information, right? So there's very few places now you can find it on realtor.com and Trulia and Redfin and all that. Like, it's the same information. I think Zillow has done it in a way that's very user friendly, like from a technology standpoint, and a branding standpoint. So if you need quick information, it's absolutely there at your fingertips. I mean, I use Zillow, right? Like if I'm looking up homes or something, if I'm in Florida and I'm like, what are these houses going for? I go to Zillow because I think their app is one of the friendliest, user friendly apps out there.
I can't believe we're
Uh,
recording this and you said that. I mean,
I
that's
know. Hey,
going
I'm
to be
I'm
evidence
honest.
now.
I know, I'm honest and upfront with it all. So I think from that perspective, it's great. I think there's two main issues from a user standpoint, from a buyer standpoint. One, if you click that contact agent button, so many people think, "Oh, I'm getting the listing agent." 9 times out of 10, you're not. If you want the listing agent, and there's issues with that we could talk about too, but you scroll down to the bottom and it'll say listed by Mitchell Berry, Key Associate Signature Realty. Here's their number. Click that. If you click contact agent, there are people, agents who pay big money to be in these zip codes, and it will ring their phone And if they don't answer, it'll ring the next person's phone and so on and so forth. So you're getting a random agent. Now, the great thing about that is they're probably not representing the seller, so they have allegiance to you. The bad part is that person could have got licensed a week ago and decided to just throw money at it and have no clue what's going on.
Fair.
So that's one big issue with Zillow. And then second is so many people put stock in the Zestimate, right? How much
Mm.
is my house worth, or how much is this house worth? And their algorithm, I'm not saying it's always wrong, but it's not always right. And so they use that algorithm. They had a big home buying program that they came out with a year or two ago, and you could sell your house to Zillow. And their goal was then, I guess, to like flip them or resell them because they were buying them at a discount. They lost, I can't remember the numbers. I want to say it was hundreds of millions or billions of, it was a ton of money, which is why their algorithm is not to be trusted, because they lost tons of money using that algorithm themselves. So I always tell people when they say my estimate's 250,000, I say ignore it, just like you would ignore your tax assessment value. What's really going to tell your value is what are other people willing to pay for a house very similar to yours in a similar location. That's going to give us a better idea of value. And then once we're on the market, right? It's capitalism. If you're priced high and everyone thinks it's priced high, you're not going to get showings, you're not going to get offers. So you can understand quickly if that house is priced right. The Zestimate is not that. So that's kind of, I guess, the boiled down good and bad of it. And then there's so many people out there, especially in the realtor space, that are terrified of Zillow because they did become a brokerage. So they are technically, in a way, realtors themselves. But they will never, in my opinion, you can't replace the human connection. And so if you're using an app and you can get into a house yourself and look around and then you can make an offer, there's still something about it. You're not getting representation from someone who knows it. People would still use that, but that human connection, I don't think, can ever truly be replaced. But I don't think Zillow is going anywhere either. I think they're in there for the long haul. And there are, like I said, there are benefits to it.
Wow, they took a beating. I mean, I'm just thinking about losing that kind of money over.
I know. I
That's a
need to look up the exact number, but I mean, it was millions and millions and millions.
Jeez, most businesses couldn't handle that. That's a shut the doors type of situation there. Man, that's brutal.
Yeah,
Okay,
but like I said, they've got agents paying thousands of dollars a month
right.
for those spots. So they're bringing in a ton of money just to get 5 phone calls a month.
So moving on to a different topic here, and I have this theory about COVID, and it's that the
Okay.
realtors started this whole thing because houses went nutso like during this
Yeah,
whole thing. Like, obviously, I'm joking about that, but like, tell me about
sure.
that. Like, what made houses like people like wanted to move all of a sudden? Like, what? Tell me about this.
I have theories and I have no way to back them up. So I don't know if they're true or not, but being in it every day, because I mean, I was a realtor before that, and then man, it took off. And one, it was exhausting. I think I got a lot of gray hairs. My wife's always pointing out gray hairs on the side of my head, and I think it was from the last 2 years. And we had to figure it out too because it was so busy. You'd try to schedule a showing, and the listing agent would say, just, it's fine, doors unlocked, just go out there. And you'd show up and there would be 15 realtors with their clients, and it was basically like an unhosted open house that you just go through. And then there were, here and other markets were even crazier, but for us it was a big deal if you had 10 or 20 offers and all these escalation clauses and prices are going up and whatnot. But my two theories behind it are, one, people spent so much time at home that they're like, you're in your house, you're working from your house, you're living in your house, and then you realize, like, I can't do this. When I'm trying to take care of the kid, do laundry, make lunch, work, my husband, my wife's in the other room doing all this. You got fed up with it. And so they're like, if we only had one extra bedroom, if we only had this, that made a big difference. Plus, number two, when they sent out all this, and this is somewhat political, doesn't need to be political, but when they sent out all this stimulus money, in my opinion, a lot of the people I know that got it didn't need the stimulus money. They were still
Right.
employed. They're just working from home. And if anything, they're saving money because they're cooking at home and they're not eating out all the
Yep.
time and going out for
Exactly.
drinks. And so you saw statistically, like, savings went up for tons of Americans during that time. Now, sure, there were some small businesses that just got brutalized, which is terrible. But
Right.
for a lot of just single, like just small families, your savings went up. So now they're like, well, I've got this extra money, and say you need 3.5% down payment on something, a $200,000 house. Well, you get the stimulus. I'm saving money. I'm still getting paid. It was easier to buy a home, and then with interest rates as low as they were, it was like this perfect tornado that just shot everything up.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it was great for realtors. It was all, I mean, it was easy for a lot of realtors. That's why we saw so many of them jump into the business over the last few years. As long as you were willing to go, and you had to go now. Someone said, I want to see this home. Can we go see it in 2 days? You're like, nope, we got to go see it now, which was absolutely exhausting, but that was fun. It was fun.
Good for business. Yeah.
It was good for business. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that made a real impact on you know, the whole a lot of different scenes, but I mean, I would see people coming in and buying houses and moving and this and that, a lot of flipping, a lot of things going on there. So,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that
and
is
you're seeing the opposite of it now. Like, you had the high savings and everything. Now savings are at, I don't even know how many years it's been, but savings are at low lows. Credit card debt extremely high, and so you're seeing this full turn. And I mean, they obviously tried to slow down the economy because of inflation, which they did. But people are feeling the strain on them because of that, which has now pushed the real estate market another way, which is not necessarily a bad thing, depending on how long it goes, and a few intricacies to it.
are there still a lot of houses on the market right now then, or not a lot at this
No,
point?
so inventory, I mean, it's been so low for the last few years. It still is very low. But it's just not a hot. I hate it. There's some realtors that are like, the market's still hot. And I'm like, you're not in the market enough. If you think the market's still hot, it's not a bad market, but
Sure.
it's not this hot market. So inventory is still extremely tight, but I mean, it doesn't matter when you don't have enough buyers, right? So sales have dropped 15%, and that's not because of even less inventory. It's because you don't have the buyers, because they don't want to pay 7-8% interest. So it's still, when your buyer looks, then there's still not many homes out there to find, but more, our inventory is building. So, average days on market for a while there was like 10 or 15 days. So they were gone so quick. Well, now you're at like 25 days. So these homes are sitting longer and longer. So it feels like you have more options because they're still on the market. But like I said, I think first quarter you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to have homes that sit longer and longer, and that's going to make an impact. And you'll have a few more choices, and we're already seeing you can negotiate more. You can take your time. You can use contingencies, like all this stuff we haven't had the luxury of when you're representing a buyer for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I got you there. If somebody's new to the market and they're coming into town, like
Yeah,
what would you, I mean, obviously you would sit down, like you were saying, you would sit down, meet with them, kind of get an idea, like what their budget looks like, kind of how that kind of works, that kind of thing. And then how does that typically work? Do you just show them different homes, or like, I mean, I know we'd had a discussion before one time about, and that this might be a little hairy to talk about, I suppose, but like we'll call them safe neighborhoods versus maybe not as safe neighborhoods.
sure.
Like how is somebody to look at like getting into the safer, like how do we like navigate like finding the safer neighborhoods without looking at police reports or something like that? Is there a way to kind of look at that without, I don't want to just overstep on anything here, but is there a way to
Sure.
do that?
Sure. So the first part of your question, if someone's moving in from a different town, a lot of times, they've got a few days to look at homes or whatever. So we try and do a lot of that at the very beginning, or even like a Zoom up front. And then, shameless plug, we've got a YouTube channel. It's called Living in Evansville, Indiana. We're one of just a few that focus on it, but that's our channel name. So people can get on there and just search through what is Evansville like. We've got the informational stuff as well as like neighborhoods and whatnot. But then, yeah, when it comes down to actually finding the place you like, that is very tough. So fair housing laws um, forbid us from calling a neighborhood a good neighborhood, a bad neighborhood, a safe neighborhood, a not safe neighborhood, because it can be misconstrued as like redlining or blockbusting. So long time ago, and obviously racism still a thing, right? It always is. But when it was real, real bad, they were trying to steer different races or different ethnicities in and out of different neighborhoods, or then do blockbusting, which is trying to get people to move out. So they put these laws into place for discrimination purposes. So now, obviously, it's still alive and well. Racism is, unfortunately, but it's not as bad as it was. But those laws are still in place. So because of that, we can't do that. So I have people all the time say, "Well, is this a safe neighborhood?" And I'm like, unfortunately, like it is illegal. That's how I lose my license. That's how I get sued. I can't answer that question, which um, really stinks a lot of times because I mean, sometimes it's like, well, if there were 30 shootings here last month, that's something that this family might want to know or this individual might want to know. So really,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. But
Yeah,
really, the
Mitchell,
only
would you
thing,
live in this neighborhood?
yeah, and I mean
Can't really can't
that's a
really
really,
say.
really gray area.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean you have to do the research
Yeah.
of A, looking up your crime reports, or B, just drive by the neighborhood. I mean, it's pretty easy, I think, for you to tell, if you drive through a neighborhood and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and everyone's sitting on their front porch smoking drugs,
Right.
then but from a
Right.
perspective of a realtor, we can't give that information, unfortunately. And a lot of people get really angry about that. But like I said,
Right.
that's how we lose our license and get sued.
Yeah, we don't want that. That's not good
No,
either.
we don't. No,
That's
we
no
don't.
good either. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what do you find challenging in Evansville about being a realtor?
Ooh, uh, I would say probably the clickiness. It's not extremely clicky, but you do find your groups, especially I'm gonna call them out, the West Siders. They
Ooh.
love being on the West Side, and I've legitimately had times like I know Evansville very, very well, right? You drive around it enough, you know it in and out.
Yeah.
But I've had people I go to sell their West Side home, and they say, "Do you live on the West Side?" And I say, "Well, no, sir. No, ma'am, I don't." And they go, I don't know if we can use you to sell our home. That's happened to me. That's happened to me. And it's this idea that like you have to be one of this group, and it's everywhere. It's not just the West Side. That's just probably the easiest one to see. And I
Evansville
get
is
it.
particularly bad about that. I will tell you, being as a chiropractor here in Evansville, and people will literally call and say, "What side of town are you on?"
Yes. Yeah.
Even if the
Yeah.
experience here is going to be different than the last guy they went to, that doesn't really make a difference. It's Evansville literally has a east side, west side the thing, and it was
Mhm.
so weird moving here and seeing that, but
Yep.
yeah, it's a legit real thing. It's really weird.
Yeah. So that 13-minute drive from one side of town to the other will kill them.
Right.
But yeah, so that's a portion, even downtown, right? Like I live downtown, and we downtowners kind of have the same thing. Like, ooh, I need a downtowner to sell this home because it's such a unique, and it's a unique neighborhood, just like the West Side is unique. So I want
Sure.
someone to understand it, and it does have an impact. I won't say it doesn't because it's nice to know that, but at the same time, like, you're mainly talking about negotiation skills and marketing skills, not necessarily, "Oh, do you know Billy Bob over on Hoppy Road?" That doesn't really matter as much in my opinion. So, there's that, and then because of the clickiness too, well, I know my aunt's sister's cousin's brother's wife is a realtor that sold 2 homes in the last 10 years. I'm gonna use her, and so it's this loyalty allegiance thing, which is fantastic, right? I love when clients and family have loyalty and allegiance to me, but if it's to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, I mean, it doesn't bite me in the butt as much as it might actually bite the client in the butt. But it's that thing, extreme loyalty, extreme clickiness. We're a town of what, 120, 125,000 people, but it feels kind of small townish at times, with some of the nicer things that a bigger city would have.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
If someone's going to reach out to you, Mitchell, and try to get a hold of you, like what's the best way they can do that?
Yep. So, one, you can go on our website, www.berryteamrealtors.com. That's plural. You can call me directly at 812-431-7706, or our team is happy to take calls at 812-315-3850. Or you can email us. You can email me at mitchellberry@keyassociates.com. Those are the easiest ways. And then obviously you can look up our YouTube and reach out to us from any social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
if they go on your website, are there houses on there that they can kind of stroll through in town?
There are, yeah. It will make you log in though, and some people hate that. So if you don't want to do that, just call me and I'll set you up on a search directly attached to the MLS, so you don't have to log in. But you
Perfect.
can search. It's syndicated through our MLS, and then we do sell homes in like the Henderson County, Kentucky area as well, if anyone's moving to that vicinity.
Well, that's one thing I think is really cool too on your website is that it's, like Zillow can be like outdated. Like it doesn't seem like it's as up to date as, like someone who's actually in the business and in the
Sure.
neighborhood. Right. So
Yep.
I think that's really cool too.
Yeah.
Well, Mitchell, I appreciate you coming on today and telling us a little bit about kind of what you do and, maybe share this, with the folks here in town or people coming to town, whatever it might be. And, so yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate what you do. You've kept me healthy and moving with all the time I've been in my car and at my desk. It's nice to make sure that my body's functioning the way it should. So that makes a big, big difference.
Awesome, man. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it, bud.
Yeah.
All right.
All
We'll
righty.
talk to you later, bud.
All right. See ya.
All right.